My name is Rosie McKee, and I'm here with our distinct panelists on the current topic. We will be waiting 2 more minutes to allow everybody that wants to join the webinar to be able to connect. So bear with us. We will start the webinar in 2 minutes. Okay, well, let's move on. We have 1 hour to touch points and to cover this interesting and very hot topic on the artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence is reshaping the gaming industry. I'm sure this time is going to be just enough to touch the basic points, but not enough to delve into any of the details. So let's start this webinar. With us today is Paula Murphy, Head of Business Development, Mindway AI, and I will give her the mic to introduce briefly herself in a moment. Also with us is Dr. Galia Mancheva, founder and CEO of AI Advai, a company that focuses on the regulatory acts on artificial intelligence in EU. And Mr. Joseph Bork, I suppose many of you already know him, partner in the company VH Partners, which has multiple international offices and focus on many relevant and important topics in the gaming industry. Paula, please, can you start with yourself to introduce briefly yourself?
Yep, of course. Thank you, Rosie. So, hi, everybody. As Rosie said, my name is Paula Murphy. I am business development, head of business development for Mindway AI. And for those of you that don't know Mindway, we are a specialized technology company. We basically bring together a very unique combination of psychological assessment, neuroscience, and AI technology to provide player tracking of operator databases, specifically looking for signs of problematic play. So the solutions that we provide are all in the safer gambling space and using AI to detect risk, basically. I'm sure we'll delve a bit deeper into it as we go.
Galia, maybe you can continue to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Rosie. Please accept my compliments for organizing this wonderful conference and for this very, very fruitful and nice organization. Prior we start. I founded the AI Advice company due to my expertise. I built my expertise working with the highest financial institutions in European and non-European countries on implementation, artificial intelligence, for the needs of capital adequacy and bank provision for about 10 years. And once this regulation actually has been announced, I found my expertise very unique on this topic, and I founded the company so we can help and provide a shoulder, but also to help businesses expand using this regulation and this knowledge.
Thank you. Joe?
Hi, everyone. I'm a lawyer by profession. I'm partner at WH Partners. Spent 18 years now working in the advising gambling industry. Part of it was also as a regulator. So I spent 6 years at the Gaming Authority in Malta, in which I occupied the roles of head of legal and enforcement as well as chief regulatory officer eventually. Over the past years, I have switched a lot into other areas of tech law, and particularly I'm focusing a lot on fintech lately, and also, of course, AI. So at the end of the day, I think with the experiences I gained over the past years, I can bridge sort of the gap between these new technologies like blockchain and AI with gaming, given that I have been in the industry for now over 18 years.
Well, thank you very much, Joe. And since we're switching now to discussion, maybe I will start with the legal point of the topic for artificial intelligence as something that is very interesting and very, very hot for a discussion. We all know that there is no comprehensive regulation at the moment covering AI, but a lot of discussions related to the AI Act for Europe and the European Union. And since the two very strong sides coming from US and China are right now dealing with the AI opportunities. How do you see the development of the AI legal framework in general and particularly in gaming?
So you're asking me?
Any of you that can take on the topic, maybe you can talk a little bit more and then pass to Joe.
Well, I will be very curious actually to hear other participants, but actually, as it is said, this is the first regulation that protects human rights. So I follow the topic. I start following this topic actually in 2021 when the white paper was published. And I provided a lot of results on the scientific conferences on the topic, and I have the opportunity to discuss the topic with colleagues from China and also from US. And actually, the market there is not regulated at all, and it's about the data. So as we know, China and USA are the front runners, and they're very, very much in front. But the market is not regulated, and it gives the opportunity to gather lots of data, lots of personal data, actually. And I would ask you, maybe it's a kind of rhetoric question, but would you like your data to be gathered from everywhere? Maybe you know that in China, social scoring now is very popular. So if you smoke somewhere, your social scoring is decreased. If you do some charity, it is increased, etc. And social scoring now in Europe is not allowed. So for the last 2 years, actually, European Commission published a lot of regulations. And for me, regulating some things, especially AI, it means boosting this industrial area. And because for me, I follow the topic, I know about 5 regulations are issued, but maybe there are more which are not related with my area. Why AI becomes so popular? Because AI sells. People don't know that much about other regulations. But what I notice, even for big summits related to AI, not everybody knows that there is a regulation. And now that we have AI regulated, we have 4 levels of risk, actually, and AI descriptions, and also that it's already it's live, this regulation, you know. So what is my prediction? I start to do this prediction about 2 years. After next 20, 50 years, it will transform Europe. So what is Europe trying to do? Actually, they cannot reach, they cannot be at the place of US and China right now, but they will start the process of boosting business in Europe to invest I will explain later in this high-risk applications in order to compete with the US and China. But what is done with this act, and it is not done in China and US. This is human right protection. So they start the act, the European Commission, European Union, with the sense of protecting human rights. Then they set a certain rules in the sense of if I want to have a lot of car on the street, I will set rules so the drivers will know the rule. Do you agree? Do you agree? I want many cars, but we need to rule that people will follow. They need a driving lesson, and to have a driving lesson, they need to know the rules how to drive. And then they provide a budget for boosting artificial intelligence and to actually to make Europe GDP grow. These are my scientific investigations from 2021. I follow the topic from scientific and from business perspective since the white paper was issued. And as I mentioned, actually my expertise in tech regulation started in 2006. So I've grown up actually as an expert and as an entrepreneur in this area.
Well, Galia, very, very interesting. Joe, what would you like to add maybe to the regulation or the over-regulation of AI that could hinder the development and creativity of the technology, or maybe not? Do you think that we shall push harder and expect AI to come in place for the gaming industry as well?
So there's this saying, this funny joke that the US invents, China copies, and Europe regulates. To be honest, we're seeing some new things nowadays with China sometimes inventing before the US, but in general, this saying still applies. Unfortunately, what hasn't changed is the last part, which is Europe regulates. Now, again, I'm a former regulator. I am a regulatory lawyer. So, in principle, I should be all in for regulation, and I do believe that regulation is necessary in some aspects. There is no way we've seen that self-regulation doesn't work in general. We've seen also that there are bad players in all industries, and they will always try to take advantage. AI has a massive potential of allowing these unfortunately bad players to actually do a lot of harm. But at the same time, we're also aware that regulation does stifle a bit innovation. There's no way about it. Like it will always happen. There will always be some level of restrictions that will not allow innovation to take effect completely. However, what is key is finding the balance. Unfortunately, Europe over the past years, over the past decade or so, has systematically failed to find the balance. What has happened is that it has put at a big disadvantage all this over-regulation, as you rightly put it, has put at a big disadvantage European operators compared to their American and Chinese counterparts. And therefore, if we really want to participate, I would say, not even win, participate in this race in AI to compete with the Americans and the Chinese, we definitely need to make sure that we get it right. The AI Act is, from what I have looked into, and I haven't really studied in detail. And to be honest, an act has to be considered only once it is implemented and once we see it functioning. to be honest, the AI Act is a bit high level compared to other regulations that we have seen from the European Union. So possibly this time we managed to get something, some sort of balance. However, you have to see regulation more holistically rather than a specific act. And we need to understand that from a competitive perspective, Europe is left behind and we need to do something about it.
So, from what I understand, you predict a lot of regulatory challenges ahead, and pretty much maybe.
Well, Rossi, when it comes to gaming in particular, the trick here is going to be whether regulators are going to try to understand the technology and create a certain degree of guidelines that allow the use of the technology and the experimenting with the technology while keeping an eye on what's happening. I hope that we won't see regulators saying we want to ban the use of AI from gaming, or sorry, this we can't approve it because we don't understand the technology. That is the worst thing that could happen for the gambling industry. What we need is regulators that keep on updating themselves, keep on learning, create some sort of sandboxes. And I hate the word sandbox because there's also another saying that sandboxes are for kids, while regulation is for adults. But at the same time, one has to make sure that we give some room to maneuver and a room to experiment for operators to make use of AI and monitor them carefully to know exactly what's going on in their operations and to make sure that AI is not abused of. But AI can bring a lot of benefits, as we will see later.
Well, that has been always the challenge for the regulators and for the regulatory frame to really allow understanding of the technology, allow understanding of the industry itself in order to create a legal framework that is going to work and in the same time be not limiting and not restricting the operation and the technology growth. So apparently we're going to see a lot of opportunities to bring regulators, to bring lawyers and experts, as well as people from the industry in a discussion and possibly round tables dealing and trying to tackle the issues in order to make it better understood as a topic and opportunities. So looking from the ethical use of the artificial intelligence, what do you think are the key obstacles in front of the operators, both, and the regulators?
Are you asking me, Rossi?
You and Paul as well can take over, because many of these points that you're going to probably touch are also related to responsible gaming, to player behavior. So
I think it's Paula's turn to. I've talked enough.
Thank you, Joe. So yeah, I'd love to come in there actually and pick up, because I think a very interesting part, just closing off the regulatory conversation that we were having there, is that what we have here in the gambling industry is already a highly regulated industry, and it's an industry where regulation varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction as well. So it's a very complex set of rules that we already have to understand. Then when you bring in regulation around AI, that is obviously making the picture even more complex, and in some ways could be more convoluted. So I always think of it as the key thing here being consider the spirit of the regulation as well as the letter of the regulation. What is it trying to achieve? And I think some good points were made about protecting sort of human rights and protecting humans' identities. So I think straight away that's one of the challenges. And I think there is certainly in the UK, there is kind of a public outcry about AI and that, oh, it's invasive, it's sort of looking into what we do. And I think a lot of people don't actually understand that it is all around us. They're using it every single day when they go onto their social media feeds or they see their Spotify daily mix, and the toothpaste is out of the tube. We cannot put it back in. So I think the challenge is in some ways like a PR challenge in making people understand the different ways in which AI can actually enhance our journeys, enhance our lives, and enhance what we do. And I think in other ways, it's kind of what is the challenge for operators when it comes to using it ethically. So obviously at Mindway AI, our whole sort of product set is built around the idea of safer gambling. And what we actually do is we take the operator data, because what we're talking about here is a data-driven approach, right? We take the play sort of spin level data and we analyze that. And the way we do that is we actually train the algorithm on scale to replicate expert psychologist human decision making. So what the operator ends up with, it's like having an army of psychologists assessing the player data, looking for signs of problematic play. Now, a few key things to say when we talk about sort of protecting individuals' identity, it's completely pseudo-anonymized. So we have no way, our side, of knowing who that player is. We couldn't say it's Joe or it's Rosie. We just know player number 1234. These are the behaviors that we're tracking, and we will then sort of make an assessment based on the level of risk. So that's one really important thing to protect the identity of the actual players. I think the other thing that is a challenge for operators when it comes to this space is understanding the science behind what you're pointing the algorithm at. So I feel like we're kind of in a situation at the moment where a lot of people are interested in AI, a lot of people are interested in data science. We have a lot of very sort of intelligent, technical minded people who are able to build algorithms, but that doesn't mean that algorithm is actually going to find what you're looking for. You have to couple up the technical understanding with the scientific understanding of, I guess, the psychology of gambling behavior. So I think these are challenges that operators need to work through. I think there's a huge temptation to think we can build this ourselves, but I think it's understanding everything else that has to go in behind it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. What are the main challenges in creating a sustainable player base with the help of the artificial intelligence?
Well, I mean that's exactly what we do. What we do at Mindway. The whole idea is to understand the risk of every single one of your players on an individualized basis, and then identify early on patterns that could lead to problematic play. So the idea being that operators can then intervene and steer these people back to a sustainable level of play, rather than that problem escalating and them losing them to problem gambling. So I think the challenges around that is as I said earlier, it's understanding what are you looking for, what indicates risk. And there's a lot of work that's been done around understanding markers of harm. But I feel like you have to take it one step further than that. It's not good enough just to say things like, does nightly play exist? Yes or no. Like you can have one player where nightly play exists, they're playing into the early hours of the morning, but you see that is sort of factored around the weekend, and you see that the deposit patterns of that player are very stable. You see control in their gambling behavior. You can have another player who, to say, does nightly play exist? Yes, no, yes, it does. And this is a player who's playing in the evening into the early hours of the morning. It's happening all days of the week. You can see that they're chasing losses. You can see that they're depositing. When that deposit runs out, they're depositing again. These are two very different players. So what our systems have to do is have the complexity to build that kind of context in, to understand in great detail on an individualized basis what we're seeing from player to player. And I think that's the tricky bit. The tricky bit isn't utilizing technology to be able to identify a group of players. It's being able to actually really understand the player behavior on that kind of level.
So maybe Joe, you can add a little bit into that because apparently what Paula is explaining is also working. It should be working aligned with the AI-driven personalization and player engagement tactics and strategies of the operators. So how AI should balance in between the sustaining and protecting the players and in the same time providing personalization and player engagement?
Sure. Well, AI allows the processing of a massive amount of data that individuals cannot do. So, unless you have automated systems that process this data, it will be very, very difficult for anyone, or even traditional technology systems are not capable of processing the data and this at the same speed of AI, because AI has developed is being developed in a way, because it's constantly developing, that it can process and assimilate data in a much more efficient way compared to traditional software that we're used to. First of all, let's make sure that it is clear that AI is not something new. So AI has been here for decades now. Gaming companies have been using AI for a lot of time, at least over a decade. But the AI we have today is much more evolved than the AI we had 10 years ago. And also it can process much more data, and it can that's called the word reason the data in a better way than previous AI models could have done. Obviously, it's not really reason, but it is the closest thing that could be to reason. So the most important thing at this stage is to not say, look, AI is bad, or AI is dangerous. That is the worst thing we could do today. Yes, AI can be bad and AI can be dangerous, definitely. But that is a byproduct of this amazing tool. It is a side effect of this amazing tool. And we do not stop taking medicine because it has a side effect. We just make sure that that side effect is shown transparently to the patient, and we also do our best to mitigate those side effects, and that is what regulation should do. Now, in this situation, as Paula perfectly said it, today there are tools that allow you to ensure that if there are trends that are showing that the player could have a compulsive gambling issue, that can be picked up much easier than it could have been picked up a few years back. And that is an amazing effect of AI. However, if an operator, a bad player, I would call it, tries to follow the trends of a particular player and sees that the player is triggered, the compulsiveness, the addiction of the player is triggered by certain features or by certain prompts that come up from the system, then if that operator makes use of that specifically because it knows the weak spots of that user, then we have a problem. And that's what needs to be controlled, in my view. That is the side effect, unfortunately, of AI if it is abused of. If AI is used properly, then the effect is excellent in terms of player protection, in terms of user engagement, and also in terms of complying with the always more complex regulatory frameworks that we have in terms of gaming, but also in terms of anti-money laundering and so on and so forth. So these are all advantages. These are all solutions that come from AI that could positively impact operators, users, but also regulators at the end of the day.
Well, very well said, very well said. And I think that here we can add also the opportunity for AI to help the game developers and the suppliers of gaming content in creation of new and more attractive games. Here, as you probably correctly stated at the beginning, there should be guidelines because obviously the bad players can always use the AI in terms of creating products that are not in line with the responsible gaming objectives and also with the Player Protection Acts. So game development is also a key opportunity for use of AI, and guidelines in that respect also should be developed. You mentioned, Joe, just a few seconds ago, the use of AI in fraud detection and AML compliance. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about this.
Again, the assimilation and the magnitude of data we have today is huge, and the best way of doing of processing that data is obviously through the use of the AI. Now, considering the massive amount of compliance obligations that operators have today when it comes to AML, this is something that I think there is no way you could comply today unless you use the right tools. And now most of the right tools are making use of AI because it's the only way to properly provide the service that caters for the massive obligations that are on operators today. So if you are trying to figure out if users are playing more than they are expected to play, considering their income, for example, it's impossible to do it manually, and it's extremely hard to do it with traditional systems as well. So then at the end of, I don't know, for example, in Bulgaria how things work, but in Malta, for example, you get inspections every couple of years from the anti-money laundering unit. They will take samples of your transactions. They will take maybe 5% of all the transactions, all the customers you have, all the transactions of 5% of the customers you have, and they will analyze one by one all the transactions, whether you should have requested any further documentation at any point in time when you saw certain trends in the transactions, and so on and so forth. So most operators, in some way or other, fail at some point in time to comply with their obligations. Now, there are those that have minor failures, but there are many that have significant and what are called by the authorities systematic failures. And unless you have really good systems in place that can flag certain transactions, that can flag certain thresholds being exceeded, that can flag certain abnormal patterns, then it will be a systematic failure. And the systematic failure will result in hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in fines, with the risk also of losing your licenses. So at the end of the day, this is something that operators should be extremely careful about. Again, I don't know how strict enforcement is in other jurisdictions, but at the end of the day, in countries like Malta, UK, it's becoming very, very difficult to actually operate unless you have these proper systems in place. And similarly to AML, with respect to responsible gaming, we're seeing a trend in many regulators, like in the UK, for example, and maybe Paula can go into much more detail here. But giving a practical example, if I am earning 100K per year, for example, and I'm spending 60K on gambling, that should be a red flag, not in terms of money laundering because it is covered from my income, but it should be a red flag when it comes to responsible gaming. And operators, correct me if I'm wrong, Paula, in the UK are expected to have a red flag there that the player is actually spending more than he or she can afford. And again, unless you are using really modern and sophisticated systems, it will be extremely, extremely difficult to pick these up.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed, Joe. And I think the key thing here, sort of looking at the UK as you brought it up as a jurisdiction, is that there is an onus on the operator to identify this behavior, to act on it, and then to evaluate the actions that they've taken and the result of those actions. So it's not just about identification, it's kind of this whole circle that feeds into itself. Now, when you consider that some of our customers are literally have millions of players, and the amount of data that that would involve sort of looking through, looking for these gambling behaviors, whether it is safer gambling triggers or AML triggers, the same thing applies. You're trying to find a needle in a haystack, and there, as Joe rightly said, there's absolutely no way you can do that without deploying the technology to do it on any kind of scale. So for me, that's where the AI comes in. It's about identifying, as the UK GC said, right? Point number one is identify. It's about identifying the players that need your attention. It's about understanding the behavior of all of your players. Once you've identified, you then need to act. So you need a solution that is going to pull up the right players and enable you to make decisions. So it's not about taking the decision away from the human beings in the safer gambling or the compliance team. It's about providing them information that enables them to make really good informed decisions. And that's whether you want to automate interactions to certain players or whether you actually want those to be human to human interactions. You need to have an understanding of what's going on with that player. So I think historically, a lot of systems, and actually a lot of systems even today, are kind of black box. So they will say, oh, there's a problem with this player, but you don't necessarily know the detail of what that problem is. What we now have with solutions like Game Scanner is a very, very huge amount of explainable and understandable information as to why the algorithm has flagged this player as being problematic. So you can really delve deep into those issues and you can interact and intervene on those issues. So a great example of that would be if somebody's got issues around time consumption, you don't want to talk to them about limit setting. You want to talk to them about their time consumption and vice versa. So I think that's the key thing. That's your identify, your act. The next bit is evaluate. And I think this is an area that a lot of our customers, when the UK GC brought this up, we're finding quite tricky in terms of, number one, how do we assess the efficacy of those interactions? And number two, how do we then evidence that when the GC come in and do their assessment and want to see what we've done? So what you then have to do is, again, use the technology to assess the change in behavior following the conversation you've had or the email that was sent or the pop-ups that were delivered to that player. have a way to actually assess what is the immediate change in behavior following that, what was the efficacy of that, and then from there you can define what do we do next. And I think that because what we're looking at is player behavior and using the data to show us what the player behavior is, that applies whether we're looking for AML triggers or safer gambling triggers. You can obviously you're looking for slightly different things, but you can utilize the same strategy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paula. Using and working with this huge amount of data is really very helpful in problematic gambling detection and trying to develop relevant framework and working with problematic players. I think that all of the comments that you made and all your company is doing is very, very good and very helpful for everybody on the B2C side in the gaming industry. Because in the panel, Galia is coming a little bit outside of the gaming industry, and she's more focused on the EU AI Act. I would like to address a question for her as she has been listening to us. Maybe, Galia, you can add a little bit more on the AML compliance and fraud detection and actually the risk levels, sanctions and incentives from the viewpoint of the AI Act.
Well, in general, as I mentioned, we have 4 levels of risk. We have a kind of a minimal risk that is AI-based video games, let's say, are considered. We have limited risk. As a limited risk are considered chatbots, but also this AI for general purposes, actually GTP models now. We have minor requirements from this perspective. They need to be compliant with the transparent rules. But then we have the so-called high-risk applications. So high-risk applications are actually the ones that have been mentioned. These are applications that use big data and algorithms. And for example, in AI Act, we don't specify on the industry, we just specify on the rules. So we have a specific requirements for the data that is used. We also have requirements for the algorithms. And this is actually the risk level that the European Commission would like to boost, because actually this type of artificial intelligence, it gives the opportunity to fasten the processes, to increase the human mistakes, and to impact the revenues, to increase the revenues. So this is the artificial intelligence actually that the European Commission is putting focus on. But in the same time, on the territory of European Union, what is considered as unacceptable risk, this is social scoring and biometric data. As face recognition and fingerprint, it's already not allowed. So up to 2nd of February, all companies that have developed such tools or have implemented in their business social scoring called biometric data now are under the restrictions. So about the restrictions, they're huge amounts, but somehow I don't want to put a focus that much on the restrictions. So if you don't follow the rules, you have to pay a lot. But I would like to pay more attention on again on the fact that this regulation is boosting innovation and innovation of a sense of high risk applications. So as all of us work in the industry where we work with big data, and we know that having data and we have manipulate them and to produce fast results, shorten the processes and increase revenues. Did I manage to answer your question?
Yes, you did. You did. Actually, can you elaborate a little bit more? I know that you also wanted to talk about fines and sanctions related to the use of these different risk level applications.
Well, actually, when it comes to unacceptable risk, so they just should be removed. You're not allowed to have them anymore. So when it comes to high risk, if your high risk system are not compliant, we have something like 7% of the global revenue of this company, considering the whole. For example, we have a mother or we have a subsidiary, so we consider all the structure. Well, we don't have actually any restrictions for this chat GTP, except we need to be transparent. So we don't have any restrictions. But as I said, focus is on high risk system. And I repeat again, biometric data is not allowed anymore in European Union.
Mhm. Well,
Maybe what I can also emphasize about the incentives, I'm sorry. European Commission, actually European Innovation Council, they have increased the budget with 200,000. Am I right, Paula? Million euro the budget when it comes to investment in innovation and in this high risk system. So I'm also prepared, if you decide and if we have time, I can specify, for example, in the gaming industry, what are the systems considered as high risk applications, high risk systems. So if we decide and if we have time, I can go very briefly.
I think that we have about 10 minutes till the end of our panel. If you would like to add for 2 minutes something that could be relevant to the sessions, please go ahead, and I don't want to interrupt you. And I see that we have few questions here in the chat box.
Well, what I have pointed out is actually as a high-risk system in gaming industry are considered payment processing system, random number generator, anti-cheat and fraud detection systems, player account management system, gamification and loyalty programs, and reporting systems. So these are also systems that can be covered actually with high risk applications, and if they're still not have been transformed to this type of system, so this means that it gives a potential to develop high risk applications in these processes.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense for people that are into the industry, Paula?
Yep, makes perfect sense to me, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you.
I see that we have few questions in the chat box. I believe that some of these questions have been answered already during the panel discussions, but for the sake of being correct, I would like to go over the questions. Paula, what are the AI-powered tools being used to promote responsible gaming? Can you give examples?
Yeah, of course. I mean, as I said earlier, that's entirely what our business is built around. So we actually have two solutions at Mindway AI. I think the key one in this space is our game scanner solution. And the whole idea of game scanner, as we were discussing, is about early identification of players that are showing signs of problematic play so that you can interact, intervene, steer them back to sustainability, and speak to the players about issues that you observe, individual issues, that they will see themselves in those issues, so that you can actually make your conversations and your interactions with them more meaningful. Does that answer the question?
I believe it does answer the question. Actually, a few more questions are related to responsible gaming as well here. I don't know if everyone sees the questions in the chat box. What measures are in place to ensure the privacy and security of player data using AI for responsible gambling initiatives?
Yeah, that's a really good and really important question, and it ties into a lot of what we were talking about earlier around sort of the nature of the regulation being about protecting the individual and the individual's rights. And it's very, very important. So the way that we handle that at Mindway is that we deal with only pseudo-anonymized data. And what I mean by that is that the only personal information we can see about any player is age, gender, and jurisdiction that they're in, because it's not about assessing them based on any kind of identifiable data. It's about looking at behavior patterns and understanding the behavior from a psychological perspective. Obviously, it's great to know if we're looking at a man or a woman, because you do see slightly different gambling behaviors. And it's great to have an idea of the age of this person, because again, you see slightly different gambling behaviors in Gen Z than you would in millennials, for example. And a lot of regulators do actually ask us to pay particular attention to younger gamblers, for example. But beyond that, we don't need to know their name. We don't need to know where they live. We don't need any of that information to be able to provide back the psychological assessment that you get from analyzing the behavior. So we don't see any of it, basically.
I
Galia,
think if I may add, I'm seeing, for example, a question from Marina Todorova. How exactly does AI used to detect fraud? Similarly, it's all about seeing the patterns. There's no need for the AI provider to see the individual data in most cases. So at the end of the day, it's just a matter of seeing the patterns, flagging those patterns that are abnormal, and then it has to be usually a human that will decide whether to escalate or not. AI will give the different scoring of each and every situation. Now, some tools work in one way, other tools work in another, but in a nutshell, correct me if I'm wrong, Paula, that is the way it works. And depending on how big the red flag is, ultimately, then there's someone who will escalate further and investigate individually. But without AI, there is no way that you can actually process and analyze those patterns in any other way, ultimately.
Yes, you can, but you have to do it manually, actually.
Yes, but manually it will take hundreds of people
Yes, yes, exactly.
to
This,
go
this is
through.
what we are, yes, this is what we are talking about. This is how actually AI helps.
So it is impossible in truth, in practice, impossible in practice.
Yeah, in real time at the sort of scale that we're talking about, I would agree that in practice it is impossible. Yeah.
Rossi, you wanted to ask me something?
yes. Actually, I saw a question that probably is more relevant for you. What are the potential costs and challenges of complying with the EU AI Act?
Yes, I will answer, but prior this, I would like just to jump in the previous topic. So for us, what also Paula says, to predict something, we don't need the personal data. So for us, everything that we gather is just variables. You know, we don't care if these variables belong to Galia, to Paul, or to Joe. You know, we interested if we female or male, or does he drinks water or doesn't drink. You know, these are just general information, which for us is data, but they're for the need of our algorithms, they are variables. From a mathematical perspective, they are variables. You know, that's it. So this is what Paul was talking about, how we protect people and their rights. So from the investment perspective, if you develop or if you have to become compliant, because, for example, we partner very well with IT companies that have already developed such type of infrastructure, but now it needs to be compliant. So there is a cost. But from middle time perspective, let's say, it's not that expensive. So if you would like to be compliant, you have to pay for this compliance. So everybody's doing it. You know, financial institutions, everybody is doing it. So it's a cost, it's a service. Being IT service, it's in the middle level of budget, let's say. But as I said, once we have rules, and also you have, because we are recently very often asked to prepare IT strategy. So once you have your systems compliant, and then you can decide on investment, what are the next systems that you're going to cover with the high risk applications. In business perspective, investing in innovation, because it should be considered as investment in innovation. So we know that once we invest in innovation, in know-how, our business should go forward.
Yeah.
And as I said, this regulation, if we say it from perspective of crisis or opportunity, this regulation needs to be seen from the perspective of opportunity. And all the time I give this example. If we want to drive cars, we need to have driving lessons. So these are now our driving lessons for AI systems. We have rules in order to proceed with more and more applications and to implement them in more processes in our business, to boost our business and to boost our revenues. Because, for example, when I start my career, as I mentioned, and we implement first this type of system, the institution I worked for, it decreases their revenues for about 40% for very short period, because this system help to manage with a lot of information.
Could I just add in there as well, in terms of when considering cost around this whole equation, we also have to think about what is the cost of not doing this? What is the cost from a commercial perspective of not innovating and not moving your business forward? And what is the cost from a compliance perspective of not adhering to the regulation? That is way, way higher than any kind of investment in these technologies is going to be. You know, ultimately, if an operator ends up being not compliant on a consistent basis, we're talking license suspension. We're talking the cost of the entirety of your business revenue. If you don't keep pace with innovation, we're talking losing customers, losing market share. Like, I don't think it's something that should just be considered in, oh, well, the cost of bringing in these solutions or these people that are experts in this area, or the additional headcount in the office to do this is not the only consideration. You know, it's what I said earlier when I said the toothpaste is out of the tube. The world is moving in this direction, and we as an industry need to definitely keep pace.
Well,
Thank you very much,
definitely.
Paula.
Galia, Paula, Joe, definitely AI has been used for years, and recently it's coming into our business and daily life with a rapid speed. So AI is here to grow opportunities, to grow apparently profits, to grow value for everyone. So AI in many of its phases and application is going to move from experimental stage to creating value. And key differentiator for companies is going to become in the future the opportunity to utilize and to use AI. But here is an interesting question, and maybe this is going to be the last from the Q&A session for the day. What mechanism can be put in place to proactively address potential ethical concerns before AI-driven gaming technologies are released to the public?
I was hoping you would read that question because it's probably the best question we've had so far, with all due respect to the others, which were all very good. But this question is very tricky and very difficult to answer, to be honest. I believe that technology can only be beaten by technology. So the best way of basically addressing this is by having regulators investing in technology, doing also It's impossible to put restrictions up front because at the end of the day, you're not going to regulate all the technology that is out there. It's impossible. But having the necessary checks and balances in place, having the right technology to detect, doing mystery shopping. In my opinion, that is the best way when it comes to enforcement. You have to actually have the regulator doing mystery shopping. When I was at the MGA, we had managed to put pressure on the government to give the MGA, for example, the power to allow us to do mystery shopping. In the new law of 2018, this was done even more forcefully, and the law gives even more rights to the authority to do mystery shopping. And yes, once certain patterns are actually identified, then one can investigate further within the operator that is regulated, and obviously the regulator has a certain amount of review that can be done on that operator. I don't know if Paula or Galia have any additional comments on this?
The only thing I would add there is to work with suppliers that can demonstrate their background, that can demonstrate where their skills come from, their knowledge comes from, that can show you actually their existing customer base and can articulate what the algorithms are actually based on. Because I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors that can occur in this space. So
Yeah, but
making sure you're
ultimately,
working with
I
professionals.
know that works for many of the companies, but in truth, that is not fair either because you're not giving a chance for startups that are genuinely good and genuinely wanting to get into the business to get involved as well. So I am not a big fan of monopolies. I'm
Even
a fan
even with
of
even a
control.
startup though, if you're a startup, you should be able to demonstrate the
Well,
what
open
your
source would
algorithms
be
are
a
based
very
on.
interesting part, at least having part of the system on open source could be a
Yeah,
solution
yeah.
as
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm saying is you should be able to demonstrate the efficacy and you should be able to articulate what your solution is based on. Um, because there is smoke and mirrors involved, right? And there are
well.
operators in this space that will claim things that they can't actually achieve. So any supplier worth their salt will have a level of transparency, whether they're a startup or whether they're somebody who's been in the game for a long time.
Agreed, agreed.
Well, thank you so much. Last question, just 2 words from each one of you. And I know that it's kind of a very difficult and question that could not be answered with 2 words, but just a provocation. How do you see AI in the gaming industry in 5 years?
Do you want me to start?
Yes, please.
Yeah. We're all sitting waiting to see who'll go first. So I think it's exciting. I think it will continue to evolve. I think we are at the beginning of the possibilities. I think if we take it back to the gambling industry being an entertainment industry and we see the application of AI across all entertainment industries, I think it will provide a better user journey, a better player journey, and hopefully a safer player journey as well.
Galia?
Galia?
What I think actually is that companies that have this appetite for AI, they for sure will be on the wave, let's say. Because my prediction is actually that next 50 years will be AI era in European Union. These are my predictions. So who are the first adopters? They will be the winners.
The
Yes,
closing
I
words?
agree. Definitely, usually those that move first have an advantage, but I think AI is moving so fast that we've seen DeepSeek, for example, and now another Chinese company has basically come up with something new, better than DeepSeek and ChatGPT altogether. So I think we're still at a stage where new operators will actually have still room to maneuver to become leaders. So this is the time to get involved in the industry. And for gaming operators, this is the time to actually start experimenting, in my view.
Yeah, absolutely. Next 5 years will be critical for everyone, and it's the time for gaming operators and anybody involved in the industry to jump in using AI technology into their business. Otherwise, there will be left behind. So, thank you so much. We just barely opened the topics, and it is a conversation that is going to continue. So thank you everyone for participating, and looking forward to our next discussion on the topic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.